Hey guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today we're doing like a Sorcerer black magic vibe. I really wanted to get like a nice like skull like resting on the surface of like this like dirty warlock feel. I do have two contact options for you guys, which will be linked down below. One of them is a little Sith Lordy and one of them is a little bit more warlocky, but they'll be, linked in and stuff. I'm starting off with this costume from Costume Supercenter, which also will be linked down below. So let's get started. I have the contacts on now. I start off with the black ones, and I'm going in with the NYX white pencil, and we're just going to sketch out a rough skull shape. So I'm starting off at the top with the temple, and I'm curving it down to create a little bit of a cheekbone. And I'm using a white pencil because I can really get the rough shape down, and it's easy to remove, so I can reshape, add on, and reform all of these lines until I get a nice final shape before I go in with more makeup. Grabbing now this Makeup Forever palette, which is new, one of their new artist palettes, I'm going in with the gray shade here, which is a nice cool toned gray or a nice neutral gray. It's not too blue. And I'm using this eyeshadow all along the entirety of this white line to add depth outside of that white line. So blend outwards, and that's going to give the illusion that the skull is resting on top of the surface of the skin. I want to pale out now, so I'm using the Becca Aqualuminous Concealer, and I'm applying that to the entire inner section of my face. This is going to give a nice bone color and a nice light shade, and it's going to get a little bit more of a skull feel. So you want to apply that everywhere that the white line isn't, so right in the middle. I decided that I want to have a little bit of a cracked feel because the forehead was looking a little too flat. So I'm using that white pencil now to kind of etch in a cracked shape, like a cracked shape in the skull, and then we're just going to go back in and we're going to shade it in the same way that we shaded the lower portion of the skull. And then just go in with a blending brush to blend out all those lines. I want to darken up the vibe now on the lower half, so I'm using that same gray shade, but I'm applying it and I'm hugging it a little bit closer to that white line, and that's going to add more depth, but we're going to go in later and add black. This is just precautionary. Boom. So do that on the other side. Now we're going to shade like this. So I'm going back in with that same palette. I'm using this like peachy mauve shade, and I'm going to start shading the inside of that skull. So I'm going into the skull shape, and I'm using just a little bit of a white line. I'm leaving a little bit of space, and that's going to add the illusion that there's a curved edge in this skull and that it protrudes outwards. So the highest portion of the skull is going to be that outer line, and then we're going to shade and add movement on the inside. So you want to add this peach mauvey pink shade everywhere around the entirety of all of those white lines and blend those out. Now I'm going in and etching in a little bit of the eye socket. So I'm using a black eyeshadow, and I'm just going to hug in around a nice skull shape, and I'm going to blend it inwards towards the eye. And that's going to give the illusion that this is a resting eye socket. You know what I'm saying? So now I'm going with a dark brown. This is Anastasia's Smoke eyeshadow, and I'm going to use that to deepen up these inner crease shades. And this is going to add more movement so the skull doesn't look too flat. You don't want to apply this everywhere. You only want to apply it in places where you want a little bit more depth. Make sure that you do the same highlight and shading techniques around the eye socket to make sure that that really protrudes out and you have that raised edge, which is what you see me doing here right now. Just hug it right in there and get a teensy little highlight line. And don't forget that forehead. Yep, don't forget the forehead. I have to do body positions like this to reach my forehead. So I'm going back in now with that white pencil. Make sure it's real good and sharp, and we're going to highlight this raised edge section. You don't want to do this all over the entirety of the skull. You want to really kind of hit the highest portions, and it's going to add maximum depth, and it's going to add a lot of texture and movement to this overall skull shape. Now we're going to quickly just throw in a nose. So I'm using that same gray eyeshadow to add a little bit of an inner missing nose socket just to create those little bone shapes. You guys can use a reference of an actual skull to really get an idea of what this looks like. And then using that same gray eyeshadow blended inwards towards the tip of the nose. Just remove any product that you got somewhere you don't want it. And then now I'm going back in with that peachy mauve shade and doing that same shading technique. So bringing that peach mauve shade inwards just to create a little bit of a highlight section with a little bit of that raised edge, and then going back in with a white liner to highlight it so it really does protrude out. So this is kind of the final step for the outline of the skull. I'm going in with this Tarte felt tip liquid eyeliner, and I'm creating a teensy black line, and I'm going around the entire skull with this, and that's really going to like solidify it together and really get it in its nice final shape where your eye really focuses on these black lines and it adds structure. And then with a little bit more of black eyeshadow, if the line's a little too stark, use that to just blend out that black line just a teensy bit. Now I'm going in with a white eyeshadow from this palette, and I'm going to highlight the highest portions of the inner part of the skull, and this is really going to add a lot of cool depth and a lot of interest to this face. And you want to just, if you guys don't know, Makeup Forever white eyeshadow is thebomb.com. So then apply it to the forehead, top of the cheekbones, and really just add lots of movement and highlights. I decided to create a little bit of brow furrow lines in the intersection of the skull, so just follow the exact same shading techniques that we've been doing this entire time. So now I'm taking a little bit of black face paint. You can use black eyeshadow, whatever you like, and I'm just going to darken up this inner eye socket. I don't want it to be completely black. I want to add a little bit of grungy because I really want to go for a vibe that this is like a dirty warlock wearing the skull mask. And then now we're adding a little bit of, like a lot of it, of black face paint to the lower section. Just really whack it on, and then with a wet towel kind of buff it in, and that's just going to give you a dirty grunge vibe. And then the skull port is just going to stick out the most. But that's the entire tutorial, my friends. I really hope that you guys like it and you guys learn something new. Definitely stay subscribed to this YouTube channel, or subscribed if you're not, for the 31 days of Halloween. Come hang out with me, and I love you guys so much. I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye, friends.